Good morning and welcome to the third webinar for EU Datathon 2022. My name is Sam Steuer and I'm from the Publications Office. And today we are very happy to have Eurostat with us, who will present you something about statistics. So for you, the most important date is the 31st of March, which is the submission deadline. And until then, you only need to submit a one-page document where you roughly tell us what you want to develop. And if you're still looking for data sets, especially for Challenge 1 and Challenge 4, we have the biggest data provider for the EU institutions with us today, and that is Eurostat. And I would like to give the floor to Julia Urhausen.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar about Eurostat statistics. So I'm going to show you several things today, how you can find and retrieve the data, mainly for Challenge 1 and for Challenge 4 from our website. One kind of information up front, which of course is very important for you all, is that all our data and all our products are free. So free of charge and free of access, and you can reuse it for free as long as you credit Eurostat as the source. And also all our products, publications, everything you find, can be used by you without prior permission from us. So to get started, there are of course different ways to access our data. One is at the bottom here via the statistics by theme pages. And these statistics by theme are not just the raw data, but you will find also like additional information. So for example, for Challenge 4, if you're not really sure, which data sets or what Eurostat has, before really entering into the raw data, I would advise you to check out, for example, such a section. I will give you a quick preview of this, which has a bit more bone to the data, for example. So you can find, have a short introduction, what you can find here. Among others, of course, you will find the database and, some selected table, but you will also find some information about the methodology, for example. If you're not really, sure, we have the questionnaires here and everything. So these sections, which are accessible either by the drop-down statistics by theme or from the homepage, are the more comprehensive part. Then, of course, we have a lot of publications or articles as well on these topics. If you need kind of like an entry point to this, I can also, advise you to check, for example, Statistics Explained, which is our wiki, where you find like articles written about the statistics, which give you a bit of a, insight into the wealth of information that we have. However, today I would like to show, of course, more how you get to the data. And for this, I would like to show you first the database, which is our full online database. And then after we had a look at this, how you can extract data from here, I will also show you some automated way how to do it, either via our bulk download, where you can, as it says, download data sets in bulk, or via our web services, which is like an API where you can, create a web service call and then source data live, which might be useful later when you actually develop your products and your apps. So we have what we call the data navigation tree, which is divided into broad topics, which is the database by theme. So this is really the core. There you will find the complete data sets with all different dimensions, and you can customize it exactly to your needs. The tables by theme are a bit simpler because usually they don't have more than 3 dimensions. So it's kind of not so multi-dimensional data sets as here. So this is kind of the entry point if you just want to browse a bit what we have. Then we also have tables on EU policy. And for example, for challenge 1, the circular economy indicators could be of interest if you're looking, for the greening of the EU and some interesting indicators. You see, we have the generation of municipal waste and several indicators related to the circular economy. And of course, also very relevant for challenge 1 is the sustainable development indicator, where we have a full set for each goal of the related indicators, and you will find all the indicators. Let's take one which is more maybe related: sustainable cities and community. You will find a full list of the SDG indicators which the EU defined, because of course they slightly divert from the UN SDG indicators in this section on EU policy. Also very interesting for challenge 1 is under the cross-cutting topics, we have climate change. You might ask yourself, why cross-cutting? Because climate change is a cross-cutting topic, because of course it not only touches upon environment, but it also, kind of agriculture data, transport statistics. It has a lot of different topics in it. And here you also see that, of course, we start with the greenhouse gas emission, which is one of the, the most important aspects when we talk about, climate change or the Green Deal in general. Then we have also what we call the drivers of climate change. So what is driving the climate change? So you see here we have data by kind of sector. And further other information. So I think for challenge 1, you will have plenty to choose from in the climate change folder, circular economy, sustainable development indicators. And then if we move up to the broad themes as well, of course, the environment folder here offers a lot of different data sets too. So there's a lot of information from Eurostat which you can use for that. For challenge 4, it's a bit more straightforward. Under science, technology, and digital society, we have one folder, which is the digital economy and society. And this data is collected for households as well as for businesses. So you see, we have, for example, here one folder. This is the household survey on ICT, where you find a lot of, how people use the internet for what, e-commerce, e-government, the trust. And then we have the survey which targets enterprises as a to ask them about, who's conducting e-commerce, how do they connect to the website or to the internet, do they sell online or buy online? So, and about ICT security. So for challenge 4, you can find plenty of information here. So now let's say you found the folder or the information you're interested in, and you would actually like to see the data. So I will, for example, as an example, use the SDG data set, and I will use the affordable and clean energy. So here we have the share of renewable energy by sector. So you see we have an icon here, which is the data browser. So this is our main extraction tool for the data, which you can use to manually download the data. So I will open it so you see it. This means here you can customize to totally the data set in the way you want it and download it in different formats. And I will show you that now. So when you open such data sets, you have a lot of information already here in the header. But more important also, if you're not familiar with this tool, I can recommend you, there's a help section and a first visit section where you will find a lot of information available, which guide you about all the functionalities and possibilities this tool offers. And also there's some frequently asked questions which might be useful for you. I'm not going to go into this here today because we will not have the time, but I really strongly recommend that if it's the first time you will use this tool, you check out these 2 pages, which are accessible from every data set. So every data set you open has this help button here on the top. You will also, for most of the data sets, find what we call an explanatory note. You see here, we don't have one. Usually for most of them, there is a metadata document, what we call, which explains a lot about the background of the data. All indicators have a short description, as we call it here. So you see, this is a very short description of the indicator, which gives you a bit of a, background information you might need. Then I'm mentioning it now, and I will come back to that later. You have every data set has an online data code. This is always listed at the top here. This is extremely important to use when you want to use the automated download or the API. And I will show you later on how to do this. But this is where you find, so you would need to identify your data set, get the data code, grab it from here, and then use it to create your web services. So here, when we scroll down, we have the selection panel and below the data set. So now the data set just shows me renewable energy sources in percent and annual data. But maybe I want to customize this because I don't need all of these information. So in order to customize it, I can create a custom data set using this plus button, which is always in the selection panel. So if I click it, it already tells me define your custom data set. So I will have, when I open it, get the pre-selection that Eurostat has done for me. But so I start from the first thing. It shows always all positions. So if I want to see the positions that are in the data set, I click and I see, okay, all the renewable energy sources total, and then the subheadings or the subcategories are selected. So let's say that I'm just interested maybe in the total and in transport, but not in the other two because I don't need that. I'm looking into something more like renewable energies for transport. Then for the countries, the same. I can check all the positions. So by default, all countries that are available are selected. But I don't want the EU28 because you see this is not a valid aggregate anymore. I'm not so interested in the euro area, or maybe I just need one or two countries. So you can also uncheck all and then just select the few countries you're interested in. For the time dimension, the same. So you can have the static positions, which will then always, when you download the data, will always show you exactly your selection. But you can also create a bookmark to the data set. And then, of course, it would be nice if in the meantime, a new reference year, 2021, had been added that this is shown. So in this case, you can choose always all positions. So that means your custom data set will always show all the time dimensions available in the data set. Or you can do what we call a rolling time, where you say, okay, in my data set, I always want data from 2014 on, and it will always show the latest available data. So in case data for 2021 is added later on, you will find it if you create a bookmark. So I recommend using the rolling time bookmark and set your start date, and then you can be sure that the data set will always show the latest one. Time frequency in this case is not applicable because it's only annual data. We have some data sets where you will find annually or quarterly data, or sometimes monthly data as well. Here you just have one position, so you leave it as it is. And the unit of measurement here is the same. It's percentage. For many data sets, we have made several different units. Here we just have these. So once I've run through all of these and defined my custom data set, I click Save and go to Data. And you see I have a loading bar here on the top and a loading sign here. And once this stopped, I can see that my data set has been updated with the countries of my choice from 2014 on to the latest available. Then in this tool, I also have the possibility from the table view to switch to a line, a bar chart, and a map. So here it's similarly that you can, now I'm showing Denmark only, that you can customize it. And in the bar chart, it will now show the 4 countries I selected, and I can change the year. So this might be something interesting if you're looking for a trend in the data to quickly see if this kind of confirms what you have in mind. You could of course quickly use these functionalities rather than to download it and maybe run it in Excel or something like this. This could be of help to you as well. So let's say I have this table, but this is good, and you can download it, but let's say maybe you're not sure, you want to come back to it later again when you actually need it to develop something or check again, but you don't want to do all these steps again and find the data set and customize it. For this, you have a bookmark function here. So with this, I can bookmark it or I can share the data set. When I click it, it creates a bookmark link, which is exactly storing the selection, the customization I've done. And this is what I said before, when you set it to rolling time, it actually will always show you the latest available year. So in case 2021 is added in the meantime, this will be added. And of course you can share it, also with a colleague or with a, co-worker by email then, or otherwise, as I said, you can copy it, either just the URL if you need it, or with a title, so you could name it, as you want. It's then renewable energy. Show you up if I copy it in the notepad. You see here, if you copy that in an email, it gives you the name of the data set as well. So I can only recommend, if you really spend quite some time to find the data set, to identify them and to customize them, maybe create a bookmark, store it somewhere in a, in a document or in your browser, so you can go back to it. And of course, also as the next step, you can download the information. For that, you have the download button here. And you see, I have plenty of possibilities. I can download it in an Excel spreadsheet, SDMX, TSV, whatever I have, kind of selected. So I think this offers possibilities for everyone here to, exactly find the information they need. As a next step, and I said we take questions, in a while, in the end then. I would like to show you how to automatically do it, because of course when you go through the data tree here, you need to kind of see which data set is available. And then let's say you have found the one on renewable energies, but you actually would like, because you're developing a product or an app, to automatically source the data from the Eurostat database and make sure you always should source the latest one. So in order to do this, you will need the dataset code. So I will copy that in my notepad to keep it. And then we have two options available from the data heading. We have the bulk download. This is where you can really download the full data set. And by the full data set, in this case here, I mean, it has all the dimensions, all the countries, all the units, everything. So to do this, you go to the bulk download. You have some guidelines available here. If you want to use them, I strongly recommend that you read them as well. And otherwise, you can access the bulk download here. And under data, you will find a list of all the data sets in TSV. So my data set was SDG 0740. So I will go to S. And ideally you just do a search SDG 0740, and you see I find it here. So I can download this TSV file, and it's going to be the full data set using codes. So in order then to decrypt the codes, you will need what we call the dictionary. But as I said, this is all explained in the guidelines. If you are interested in downloading data in bulk, please read the information. The more straightforward way to do it is actually using the web services. So with the web services, you can create an API. We usually use the JSON web services, but we also have the XTMX. Here in this section, the JSON web services, you have information on how this works, obviously. You have an information how you can, the structure, how it is built, if you want to include it in your development, how you generate a new query. So it's all explained here, step by step. and how you modify an existing query, and then you have the query builder. So I'm going to show that to you briefly now. So when you go to the query builder, you would need here, it says, please enter a new dataset code. So this is the one this is why I said before, if you want to use this, it's always good to copy them out or to create bookmarks so you can find the dataset code. I click next, and here now I can create my REST query. So that means the time selection, I can say, for example, I need the data since what we did before 2014. I want all the countries, so I keep the default, or I want it for a fixed number of countries, so I can add them to my code. Then the same here, we have these dimensions that we also saw in the data sets, the total renewable energy sources as well as by sector. So I'm going to use the total and transport again. And for percentage, I just have what we saw in the data set, one possibility. Then I can kind of customize this, the exclude the EU aggregate. In this case, I don't want it. I leave everything as it is. And I click on generate query filter. And this then generates the URL or the dataset code for my query. So that means I will always need to start the query with this part. I'll show you how to build it as a URL, and then copy my generated code after it. So I will show you that if I use this now, sorry, here as like a web browser URL, it retrieves automatically the data for me. I think this could be very useful if you really want to connect your tool to an automated data download. We really recommend you to use this web services. Otherwise, as I said, the database is freely available for you to browse. We have a search functionality where I could, for example, now, if I renewable energy, where I can also then put in my search term, and then I can filter and as a collection choose data sets. So I'm only gonna, be directed to data sets that, include the search term renewable energy. And you see here, and I can directly access the data sets from here. You can sort them. I mean, in this case, it's sorted by relevancy or publication dates, which means the update date. And you can further sort it by or drill down by topics in this case. So I think the search facility could also help you to identify the data sets you need. So with this, I will finish my presentation, and I'm happy I saw there was already something in the chat, some questions. So I saw the first question was, do you have any interesting data on forests? Yes, we have data on forests under the topic agriculture, forestry and fisheries. There's a folder forestry where you have data, yes, on the production of wood, so to say, and the trade, the removals, the production and trade data, the economics, so that's the business sector, the business side, businesses working in the forestry sector. We have forest resources, so meaning, as you see here, the area of wooded land, the volume of timber, and environmental functions. So there is, I mean, it's not, hundreds of data sets, but there's plenty of information on forests here. So I hope I've answered this question. The next one was, when browsing using the tree, then one should expect to find the same data set indexed under different topics. Yes and no. Yes, partly, because what I explained already, the cross-cutting topics under climate change, you will find data, for example, on greenhouse gas emissions, which are also available under the topic of environment. So basically the message is you can't miss it. So it depends a bit on how you approach the topic. If you're interested in a wider environmental view and you want to just see, and greenhouse gas emissions is one, or of course here for climate change, you will find the information as well. This is why usually using the search can be very helpful as well. But I think the idea is what we always try is that whatever path you take, you will still find the relevant information on the topics. So I think this is rather helpful for you because, as I said, I don't think you can miss the information. You will rather find it maybe twice in different folders, but yeah. And then which metadata are available? Yes, as I mentioned before, most data sets or most folders have what we call a metadata document. Sometimes it's already attached on an upper branch of a tree, like here, and sometimes it's attached to a data set, to a very detailed data set. So when you open the metadata document, you will have a wealth of information. So this actually follows what is laid out in the statistical code of practice for, data quality. This explains you exactly, the description of the data, possible classification used, the statistical units. So a lot of useful information on which institutional basis this data is collected from the member state. So this is really a wealth of information you can also dig into if you're really interested in the methodology or the metadata behind. And as I said, it's sometimes you might need to look in the tree if it's attached to a specific data set, or like here to a branch, as we call it, or a folder, which then is the metadata for all the data sets underneath as well. How often are the data sets updated? Is there a uniform pattern or does it depend on the data set? So overall, our database is updated twice a day at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. However, that doesn't mean that every data set is updated at this point in time. It depends on the data collection. As I mentioned already, we have some data that is collected monthly. We have some data that is collected quarterly and some data that is collected annually. So if we look now for the for example, I can tell you for the digital economy and society, it's an annual survey that is usually published in December. So that means in December, we publish the survey results and the data for that reference year. So in December 2021, data for the reference year 2021 from the surveys were published. So this is very timely because, it's basically data is published in the same year as to which it refers, because of course it usually asks the respondents in the last 3 months, have you used the internet in the last 12 months? So here you will find already, for example, data for 2021. Data is then updated if member states send update of data. Let's say they have revised something, which in this case is rather uncommon. So, but data sets could be updated due to revisions of member states. For the environment indicator, for example, it depends on the frequency of the data collection as well. So you would need to check in the metadata itself. Usually, okay. Nothing. I will have a look here for the air emissions. Usually it is mentioned under point 14. Eurostat publishes the data less than 5 months after the reference period. So in your case, the reference period would be a year, let's say 2021. That means we will publish the data less than 5 months after the reference period. So 2021, the end of the year. So that means in May, end of May this year, you can expect the 2021 data to be published. Do you have any data sets related to the Ukrainian crisis, any angle, migrants, market prices? Yes, of course, we have data on migration, which you will find in the population data sets. So we have under the folder migration. We have people gain the acquisition of citizenship or the immigrants by partner country, and then asylum is of course people who have lodged an asylum application with a country. So for example, you could check here about, and then by citizenship use Ukraine. However, I have to say that these data are all annual, so they will not yet show anything. For the asylum data, for the applications, we have monthly data. So if people lodge an asylum application, this will be, shown here. Or the market prices. Of course, one of the biggest points or, questions we had was about energy. So we have, of course, a lot about, the energy, the prices of natural gas and electricity, and also, of course, about, you find it here in the even monthly data, about trade by supply, transformation and consumption, trade by partner country. So you will find a lot, which kind of can help you to analyze aspects of the situation in the data. And usually, of course, monthly data are more telling than at this point because they're more short-term than annual data.
Julia, if you don't mind, I would ask the next question, but first let me congratulate you to the new data browser. I think that's really a brilliant tool, and I imagine there was quite some work behind to make it so flawless. It looks really, really impressive. My question would be, we check a lot of your data, and the data as such is superb, but there's a reason behind, and it's in the aggregation. Maybe you can explain a bit how Eurostat gets the data itself.
Yes, so we receive our data from the national statistical offices of the member states or from other relevant bodies, but mainly from the national statistical offices. So the national statistical offices are responsible for the data collection in their country in the EU. And these data is then, most of the data collection are based on a legislation. So member states are also obliged to collect this data and have to follow different methodologies. But the main thing is that we always make sure that data is harmonized and comparable. So, take the example of, for example, the labor market of unemployed. We want to make sure that when we publish the data on unemployment, that the figures measure exactly the same in each of the EU member states. So in order to do that, there are definitions of who is counted as an unemployed person. And every member state has to collect the data according to these standards and definitions, so that when we publish the data, our teams in the house check for coherence and check that the data are collected according to these standards. Then in Eurostat, our job is not just to check the quality and the coherence of the data, but also to calculate the EU aggregates out of this. And when we are sure that the data is of high quality, it is published in our database. And this is why sometimes also data collections could be, or data for some country can be missing. If our team still has doubts and is checking with the member states, it might be that you will find, data for 1 year for all the countries, and maybe 2 or 3 are missing. That means they're still under, they're still being checked, and then will be loaded when we are satisfied with the quality.
Great, thanks so much. And thanks a lot for the presentation. I think we're now at the end. And I would like to thank you in the name of all the participants and also the viewers later online for showing us how Eurostat works and all the data it provides. And